Welcome everybody to the Tourism Molecules podcast. Today I'm joined by Eric from Korrect Life, an awesome new brand coming out of Austin, Texas. And, you know, there's a really cool backstory to how this brand came to be as well. And Eric's been a part of some really big journeys, including Onnit, which, you know, a lot of people in Australia actually know as well. So Eric, I just thought we'd kick off, man, but tell me a bit about your journey and kind of how you came to get into this space from, you know, the get-go.
Yeah. Well, it's been quite a long journey. I guess it started, started as a kid, just playing sports and getting injured. Blew my knee out in, I think, my sophomore year of high school, and got introduced to the world of orthopedics and sports medicine. And that really was a world of information that I found endlessly interesting. And so that kind of guided me towards health and wellness in college, and went to college, double majored in nursing and exercise physiology, just to capture as much of that information as possible. And spent very little time nursing, but just went more into the nuts and bolts of things, just pharmaceuticals, dermaceuticals, cosmeceuticals, nutraceuticals. I guess I discovered the dark underbelly of the pharmaceutical world right out of college, and not proud to say it, but I was beating the drum for, Vicodin, Vicoprofen, Dilaudid, all of these painkiller medications, that are now, it has just kind of destroyed society in certain ways. So that was kind of like a record scratch kind of stop there. But it taught me a lot, it taught me a lot about what works, what doesn't work, what I want to spend my time and energy on, and what I don't. Living in New York City through 9/11, I was working, I got through my nursing, my short nursing career, was working for Knoll Pharmaceuticals, a couple other folks, and then found my way to Metagenics, which is a really great practitioner brand. And I was working all over, New York City, the Bronx, Brooklyn, that whole area, just seeing how much nutrition and supplementation can help people. And coming through, 9/11, half of my job was developing detox protocols for folks living downtown, getting through that whole mess down there. Learned a ton in that experience, and through all that, learning so much about the body, learning about how important food is, how important our environment is to keeping us healthy, which really piqued my interest around Whole Foods Market. And so, I was banging on doors and selling supplements all over New York City, but spending my evenings hanging out in Whole Foods Market, like in Chelsea, was the main store that was open back then, like 2000, 2001. And I just loved talking to people there, and I loved how they were messaging things and merchandising things. Again, it was this whole new world that was really interesting to me. So I made up my mind. I was like, these guys are doing incredible stuff. I just want to see where this path goes. So I resigned from my 6-figure plus, New York City sales and consulting gigs, and
always hard to
went
do.
to a hiring fair for the Columbus Circle store for Whole Foods Market, handed my resume to the guy, and I was like, just give me a job, man. I'm like, I love what you're doing here. He looked at my resume. He's like, I can pay you $9 an hour. He's like, $9 an hour is what I can. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
$9 an hour. We'll throw you in whole body. You can mess with supplements and, learn this side of the business, retail. And I was like, I'm in. And Whole Foods, I advanced quickly through Whole Foods from Brooklyn to, Denver, Colorado, and then eventually to the headquarters in Austin, Texas. And yeah, that was just learning the retail side of the business, understanding how important it is that supplements message properly, understanding what customers were really wanting to know about supplements, what really moved the needle in terms of information, in terms of label design, just really in the trenches kind of stuff, just speaking to all of those reps that would cycle through. It was just like a mini seminar every time a different brand would come through and try to ingratiate themselves to the Whole Foods market culture. And that was an incredible experience and led me to Austin, where I just happened to, I'm going to shorten the story a little bit, but literally on the floor of Whole Foods Market in Austin, Texas, I bump into Aubrey Marcus, and I know exactly who he is. He doesn't know who I am. He just walks up to me and he's like, "Hey man, I got this brand called Onnit. Would really love to know how to get my supplements into Whole Foods." And I was like, "Stop right there. I know who you are. I'm already taking your supplements. Let's work on this together." And within a year, we organized this giant launch all throughout Whole Foods Market. Rogan came down, did a podcast.
Yeah, I remember when you got into Whole Foods. So that was okay. That was you. That's awesome.
That was me on the Whole Foods side.
Right.
And then Aubrey, kind of made me the offer I couldn't refuse to join the Onnit team. After we launched that in Whole Foods in 2014. And that's where it started for me with Onnit, and just helped grow and scale Onnit up into our acquisition by Unilever in 2021.
Wow.
2 years post acquisition, me and Aubrey and one or two other folks from Onnit were like, "Man, that was a fun ride.
Yeah,
let's do it again. There's a lot we still want to do. There's innovations and ideas that we couldn't quite get off the ground at Onnit, that as a scrappy startup we can probably just come right out the gate with." And that's how Korrect was born, and here we are.
Dude, that's an amazing story. I mean, you don't have to skip over a part where you meet Aubrey Marcus, by the way. That's always fun. I've always been a fan. I loved his stuff from way back when. I mean, I was always into supplements too, kind of like you. And when I stumbled on, I started getting interested in ayahuasca, actually. That's how I stumbled on that famous, I think it's like 127. It's a pretty early Joe Rogan pod where they'd obviously already met and started probably working together on it in terms of, Joe running some ads and that sort of stuff. But he does this incredible trip report where he talks about his experiences and seeing his grandma again, all this wild, amazing stuff. And I was like, this guy's awesome. He's a really good storyteller. And then I looked into kind of the fact that he had a brand, because, both of those guys are really good at not mentioning the brand they have. They sort of, which is kind of cool, because I guess they're trying to separate the different worlds and not make it look too salesy when they do these podcasts and whatnot. They actually genuinely want to share some stories. But then I was like, oh, this is Alpha. This is the guy that owns Alpha Brain. That penetrated to Australia as well, that brand. It wasn't big over here because we have, there's getting into any country, I'm sure I don't need to tell you, they all have different laws and regulations and hoops you got to jump through it. They all have different market sizes, which dictate whether it's worth jumping through those hoops in the first place, to do it right. And whether you got to water down your formula or not, whether you really want to do that. So it was here with a few places, and then it sort of wasn't. But it really helped kick off the nootropic movement in Australia, because it was sort of like, it was just the best presented and explained product around, brain function. So that's what got my attention to Onnit and just Aubrey in general. And we started a supplement store. We dabbled in some brands across that journey as well. And I'd always been trying to get his products in. And, he kept just getting bigger and bigger. So at the same time, was getting out of that zone where you could email him anymore or DM him. At first you could kind of still DM the guy like, hey, and you'd always sign off for something cool and spiritual. You're like, he said something, hookah, hey, or something. And you'd be like, this is awesome. it'd be like, look, we're not looking to get in Australia right now, brother, but maybe reach out a little bit down the track. And by then, the guy, I think he's got 1 million followers now. I can't keep up, but obviously things had expanded so much, and he was sort of doing fit for service and whatnot. And I was always wanting to get in touch with the people at Onnit, or get access to the brand, not so much because of the products, directly, but also because of just the ethos, the what the company was about, and what you guys were doing. I mean, human optimization. I don't even know if that term was really used in supplements before Onnit, and you guys kind of really made that known. So, and it just became like, it's not going to happen. And then he sold it. I was like, shit, that's sort of that. Because I don't know what Unilever's looking to do, but I'd say if they're coming into Australia, they're not going through some small independent sub store like me, So when Korrect Life popped up, I was like, oh, thank God, like they're doing something again.
Yeah.
I saw him down in, he was actually in Sydney for like a poetry book. He was doing like a little book launch. It was this nice little, intimate setting and whatnot. And afterwards I spoke to him, and he was like, yeah, we've got a new brand coming out. I was like, look, man, I'd love to get it into Oz. And then, from there I started reaching out. I think I got in touch with you at some point. I think through Mark Lobliner, right? That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our good friends at Go BHB.
Yeah. He's a great dude, man. He's a really cool dude. Mark is
absolutely.
He's just real as it gets.
Just this giant ball of kind muscle.
Yeah, right. With deltoids that just extend part, no frame would fit him. So I was super stoked to get in touch with you, Eric. And I'm actually really stoked to have you on, because you've actually got a lot, you've been pretty humble in that backstory, but I can kind of tell when a supplement formula has someone's fingerprints on it. I just have this, over the years, if you're a fanatic like me, it becomes like art for me. It's like, oh, I see what they've done, why they put those together, and I've got a question around this. And I remember looking at it going like, this isn't an Aubrey formula. Like, it's a really, really good formula, but his style was different. I mean, and I don't know how long he was formulating at Onnit. Maybe in the early days, maybe later, maybe he wasn't. You'd know more about that than me. But I was like, this is very unique. And I remember talking to AI, ChatGPT is like, who do you think formulated this? I've got this Eric guy here. I put all these names right into it that are with the company that I could see. I was just trying to stalk it. And it was like, look, it looks like it's Eric. Based on, somehow AI knows your style a little bit. And like
maybe,
I mean, it could have been a stab.
AI helped me build this business
Right.
in a lot of ways. I've got my own Korrect. I got a couple different Korrect agents that help in, retention, organic strategy. I don't use AI for the formulations though.
No.
At least not yet. Certainly in, some elements of research and helping to identify the studies and the science that we can really lean into for claim substantiation. Because if you just take anything that an ingredient supplier gives you as, look at all of our studies, it takes a long time to read through all of those studies. And, I'm grateful for my education. As a nurse, they taught us to be really educated consumers of research, for the obvious reasons with all of the medications that, we were tasked with understanding and administering, understanding pharmacodynamics and, how efficacy works over, a broad range of, of a population.
Yes.
But to really put something out to market in this industry and stay out of the crosshairs, you really got to understand how to, dot your I's and cross your T's. And it took me 2 years to develop these two initial formulas, multiple iterations, obviously Aubrey involved in that process. And
sure.
But yeah, definitely a different process than we had over at Onnit.
Oh yeah, and things have changed so much in that time span too, right? Like, take any industry that's had as much change, and it'll always be like that in supplements, I think, because of the innovation side, but also we've got the regulation side. The two things, the innovation and the regulation, are constantly, I wouldn't say at war, but like it in a way limits the moves you can make until you get some new opportunities with ingredients that have been designed around what the regulations allow. And I think that's what almost makes it even more art in a way, because it's like you're finding things that effective, efficacious, but you're also trying to find things that stay natural or don't cross over into the pharmaceutical world, or they just don't have a problem with. Because I mean, not every regulatory body makes a lot of sense all the time either. Let's just be real about that. There's things that they get a bee in their bonnet about, and it's like, really? Okay. DMAE, like, all right. Or, a B vitamin. And then there's other things that they just don't touch, like, I guess the wrong forms of B6 and little things that we sort of know that can be an issue for people. But in terms of the mass market, it's out there and available, and you can definitely have too much of it and have a really bad reaction. There's nothing.
I mean, it's plenty of bad apples to bushels out there.
Well, that's right. I mean, I've always got to be fair, I think, to these regulatory bodies and admit that there's definitely players in our space that we didn't always do the right things. We didn't always invite the right attention to our space, and that's fair. That's more than fair. And that goes across every industry. Let's be real.
Agreed.
And I mean, look, definitely AI is so good for summarizing research and helping you get rabbit holes and getting contacts. But the art of formulation really comes down to putting those things together, a bit of intuition and I guess self-experimentation and experience, but also just like the anecdotal. I'm sure you tried these out a lot and gave them to the team, and I'm sure Aubrey was sipping on them too, to get that sweet spot. And what I really love about, I'm sipping Edge right now. This isn't a plug for the company, by the way. Maybe it is.
Here, we can turn it into one.
You got one too? Yeah, of course you do. Dude, this flavor, holy shit. It's just so good. I've got the mango. I don't want anything else. I mean, I'm sure there's others either in the works or available, but it just, the way you use glycine as a natural sweetener, but at the same time, it's also glutamate smoothing. It's just like, how'd you stumble on that? Was that just kind of like, oh yeah, that works? Or did you think about that for a long time, or where'd you get that idea?
Well, it was not my idea. So when you go through this journey like we did with Onnit, there's lots of folks out there that want you to check out their new ingredient or check out their new IP, like they see you as someone that might be able to shepherd them into the market. And we found this natural sweetener called Glybia, which is an IP protected sweetener out of Canada.
Right.
And they sent us, a bunch of samples of it, and we were trying it just on our own. Yeah, the Glybia in there.
Yeah, folks at home. Show them later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we were trying it, using it in different recipes. I would Frankenstein these formulas together in my kitchen and, take them at different times and see what tasted good, what didn't. But this Glybia was so unique, and we found that it just really covered all of those bitter notes that are left behind from plain stevia or even Reb M. It took the monk fruit that is in the combination and gave it this mouthfeel and this granular sort of effect. It just acted just like sugar. It's a really cool piece of IP that they allowed us to use exclusively here in North America, certainly in the United States.
That's cool.
A couple other brands in Canada have used it, but we couldn't find anything else that worked as good as this. And like you're talking about the Edge formula, right? Like there's a really dense bitter root in there called Alpinia galanga that's difficult to flavor. This just smoothed it right over. The ketones in our fuel product, the Glybia just took all the bitterness out of there. Like if you've ever had like a ketone IQ and then tasted our fuel, yeah, exactly. It's like just the most delicious treat.
Oh yeah, fuel's really tasty, man. Yeah, it's very easy to get down. I like the fact with fuel too, jumping to that one, which is a little bit of a different formula. This is obviously ketones. This is probably where you and Mark, got to know each other to some degree because he's heavily involved in ketone products as well. But the ketones and the electrolytes are just a great combination because they make sense together. And anyone that's fasting knows that electrolytes become, an issue, or anyone that wants to do like a keto diet or whatever, you need electrolytes, but you don't want too many at once. What I love about, with this electrolyte arms race that a lot of brands are doing, as happens, right? Everyone go, oh, you want electrolytes? Here's some more. And you end up with like 10 grams. What happens? Just
very American thing to do.
Yeah, and look, Australia often follows suit. Let's be real. What tends to happen is as you push the salt levels up, it just becomes an anima. And I want people out there to know this. If you have too many electrolytes at once, you will get this laxative effect. And it's just good for you to know where that's coming from, because people tend to blame all kinds of things before they figure these things out, right? It's like, is it the chicken I had last night? It's like, if it's happening to you every day when you wake up in the morning having these mega doses, and so you end up, realizing there's a sweet spot for salts. And if you overdo it, you sort of knock people out of having the full serving of your other active ingredients. So you've really intelligently kept it at a very sensible level, but an effective level. It's not fairy dusted either. And the same with the ketones, because too many ketones at once can be a bit overwhelming as well. And you've got just the right dose in there, man. I can have a full sachet and enjoy it. It's got that unique energy boost that only ketones can provide. It's very hard to describe unless you've had ketones. So, and for anyone listening, it's not like caffeine. It's not like stimulants, dynamine, nothing like that. It's very interesting. But there's energy there, and there's mental energy there, and it's like a physical. You can almost feel your body a bit more. So great for people that are running, performing exercise and not fueling on. You can actually dual fuel with carbs anyway. That myth has sort of been, but it's really good if you don't want to switch to your carbs yet. Like I like to kind of have my carbs from midday onwards. I like to keep the morning as a good insulin sensitivity reset. So I found I'm using fuel a lot because it just helps putter around on some energy when I'm at work and whatnot, and then when I want to switch over in the evenings to, like a hypertrophy session where I'll need my carbs, I can just do that. So that's really, was that a specific choice you made too, to just like not overdo these ingredients so people could take them every day?
Yeah. I mean, you essentially nailed it. Ketones have been around for a while. They've gotten good press, they've gotten bad press, but we've always really enjoyed what ketones do and really believe in the power of ketones for overall health. And you kind of described an interesting sort of phenomena of like when you take ketones, this feeling that you get that's different than stimulation. And when you understand how, what a ketone is, and you understand that it, like, the brain just loves ketones. It's a preferable source of fuel for the brain. So like, imagine you're super thirsty and someone hands you a glass of water. That glass of water is going to feel that much better when you're that much thirstier. And so when your brain is starving for more fuel, like in the context of exercise or in the context of sweat or expending calories at all, and you got those ketones that come in and just kind of satiate the mind, and the mind and the body are connected, it creates this really wonderful feeling. Like you said, it's hard to describe. It's not a stimulating feeling. It's more of a satiating feeling. And what that ultimately is doing is just giving your brain what it needs to truly focus on the task at hand. And it spares the glycogen that you would normally be spending, that your brain would be grabbing that glycogen. Your muscles are trying to grab that glycogen. And before you know it, you're like, I'm a little bit tired. It's time to stop my workout or stop this set. And so we felt like, okay, we can provide ketones in this ideal middle range, surround it with things that keep the cell hydrated. And you nailed it as well with the salt content. I mean, we tried everything, right? Like LMNT is liquid IV. They're great. They do what they say they're going to do. One of them has a lot of sugar. One of them has a lot of salt. They're good for different reasons. And when we set out on this flavor exercise, we tasted every iteration from 300 up to 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and these specific ratios, and we ended up right where we did it at about 600, because that was like that beautiful sweet spot that didn't mess with flavor, allowed for the right ratio, because we want to do this sodium potassium ratio that's supported by science, 2 to 1. This calcium to magnesium ratio, and to fit these macro and trace and electrolytes in there, it wasn't just willy-nilly, like it was iteration after iteration after iteration, testing these out in our gym, in our community, and getting to a formula that our community said, this is doing something significant. And that's when we knew we had something special. Now we just got to figure out how to talk about such a complex product,
Definitely. That's the only challenge, right? Is making people aware of like what this can do, and in a very simplified way, which I learn the hard way all the time. I do a lot of we do a lot of our own ads and things to help drive. We import a lot of unique products. It's kind of our specialty at our store. I also do some consulting for brands and develop some things in the background as well. And so we get really tuned into what works and what doesn't. And similar to what you said, working at Whole Foods, having a retail arm, I'm not saying me and my wife want to do it forever. Eventually we'll go into more like distribution and probably fulfillment, right? But we kind of want to keep it for as long as possible, because you get so much data about what people are responding to, what they're asking for, what they're really asking for, versus what Instagram makes you think is popular. What are people actually coming in and being curious about? And you get so much data on what's landing, what's just making their eyes glaze over when you're explaining something. It's like, all right, that's not landing. And so, with products like this, it's finding that sweet spot of like, this is the use case. This is where you're going to benefit from it most. And this is where you're going to feel it in your day to day. And then, getting that sort of word out there consistently from, obviously, once people try it and really get a benefit, the word of mouth then gets that repeat buy and that momentum. And so that's always the sweet spot. Even with the ads, I find I've got to be really to the point about how it's going to benefit them. And you've got to kind of engage them fairly quickly on that. And then there's the supplement nerd niche, which is cool. They'll hang around for a longer explanation. They'll watch this pod, But there's going to be people that are like, they just want to know what they're going to get out of it so they can
They want the elevator pitch for everything.
And today's society is not changing that anytime soon, right? But getting back to Edge, and then, of course, Energy, which is the capsule form, for want of a better description. There's a few subtle differences. One thing that's picking up a lot, and I think is starting to penetrate, so this is even in Australia, which is always going to be, I think, a little behind the US, let's just face it. Paraxanthine, also known as Enfinity, right? Make sure I'm getting that right. It's got a trademark name, but a lot of people do know the word paraxanthine now. And obviously Sean Wells, NNB, it's a caffeine metabolite. I love that you chose to use this. I think that was a really good move. I'm sure it's, like you said, you got sent lots of samples to try, and you obviously tried it yourself many times. It's a fascinating. So obviously there's always been theobromine. Doesn't do a lot when you take it. A little bit of a brightening of mood. It's the other caffeine metabolite. Then there's theophylline. Now pre-workout companies were isolating that for a little while. There's a couple of edgy is probably not the word, but those outrageous brands that would actually isolate theophylline and put it in as an additional to caffeine. And back then I didn't know what theophylline was, but it's a caffeine metabolite. But it's the one you don't want, man. Like, I mean, maybe some people want. It feels
depends.
It depends on the
theophylline. I think versions of theophylline are used in asthma therapy. As their bronchodilators. That like theophylline is amazing for different things, but probably the part of the caffeine molecule that you want the least of. So Sean Wells, the creator of Enfinity, maybe the founder of Paraxanthine altogether. I don't know exactly how that goes, but
Yeah.
I think he came into Onnit 2017 or 2018 with this ingredient.
Right.
And we were in love with it then. And
Yeah.
we were trying to find ways to formulate with it, but we were we were messing with it with some different formulas, and we were messing with it with the Alpha Brain Black. But ultimately, we never got it into a product. And then when Unilever got into the conversation, they didn't want us to do anything. Full stop with anything, really. Like innovation kind of stopped at that point.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ingredients that when we decided to do Korrect, we're like, we got to go all in on Paraxanthine. This stuff is incredible.
Yes.
And it hadn't even really began to penetrate the market when we started formulating in 2023. 24, we launched in 25, and now you got Kim Kardashian launching a Paraxanthine brand, and like the market penetration is happening now. Like 8 years from when we were introduced to it to now.
Yes.
Like that's the life cycle of an ingredient right there. Like it's kind of a crazy story just for that. And we couldn't be more excited about this formula. Like we think this has legs. Obviously, we've got 2 versions of it now, the capsule and the stick pack. We have an RTD shot in development.
Cool. Okay. We get a little bit of a sneaky window into what's coming. Yeah, RTD shot. I like that. Yeah. Don't tell anyone, guys. It's top secret. Yeah, dude. I mean, the Paraxanthine, and I guess for anyone that hasn't tried it, that maybe is listening along, it's really smooth. It's very dopamine tone, centric. It's not, like, I'll give you a good example, Eric. I took a stim cut this week, which I never recommend if you drink a lot of coffee, but I recommend, but also I don't want to put people through that. It's pretty painful. Like your dopamine's real flat. It's used to obviously these signaling moments because you're so consistent with your coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, usually you have that first one when you first get up. Bad time to do it. Best to wait an hour, maybe 2. I mean, even Aubrey's been talking about that for years, in his books and so on. And we all know what we should do, but it slips in there. You wake up tired. You're straight over that coffee machine, and I always slip off and then have to take a week break to reset my receptors and everything, and my my adrenaline and my dopamine tends to rebalance, and then coffee works great again. And I start by doing the right thing, waiting a couple hours before I have my first one, and things are great for about 6 months, and then before you know it, I've hooked up to an IV drip of coffee again. And what happened during this period is I actually was able to use, because I was like, look, I'm going to try a bit of Paraxanthine. I'm still going to delay it, not have it first thing. But, this is always painful when I have this break. I want to see how this performs in this period of time to help kind of bridge it. It's been amazing. I've been sipping these like all day at work because like I feel so flat, so unmotivated because that caffeine's just not there. My body hasn't reset yet. And then I start sipping on this, and it doesn't do the thing that caffeine does. It doesn't come and just kind of override things. It doesn't feel like an adrenal dump's happening. I'm not getting that thing. No anxiety. I don't have to suddenly go to the toilet if I didn't before. There's things that can happen with coffee where it stimulates the bowel or whatever. Not always a bad thing, but in the middle of the day, you don't always want that. I'm just like, I can totally handle this dopamine drop now. Something's come in, but I don't feel like I'm back on coffee. I just feel good. And it's like my adrenals are still resetting. Like I don't feel like it's prolonged that window or anything. And it is so nice to have on the back of caffeine when you reintroduce it. So what tends to happen for me, this is the use case I really like with it, that I think people would resonate with. I'll still have the morning coffee at about, say I get up pretty early, like 5. So say 6 or 7, I'm having that coffee, usually a long black, so it lasts a bit longer and I'm working away. When I want to have that second kick or throughout the day, that's when Edge works really well for me because I can sip on it. That's why I like that you've got it in a beverage form as well as the pills, because pills are more like I want some effect. I want to just get it going. And it's great for that too. You can have it with your coffee in it. The combo is fantastic.
It sure is.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I'm sure you've done it many times. I like the 1 pill actually. 2 is good, but 3 is actually overwhelming. Like I like the fact that you can dial it into your sweet spot. But the beverage thing is, a lot of people want to sip something at the desk. I mean, how many times have you been called in to a meeting, or you need to have a meeting or go to a meeting and you want to sip on something? It's part of the ritual, but you don't really want to order a decaf or a tea necessarily. That's your other options. you sort of end up having that extra coffee, that extra thing, because you want a little kick, but then it pushes you out of the Goldilocks zone. You know, you had that sweet spot where you're on your one coffee, or, you know, you're whatever you like, your particular double espresso. Things were going good. Maybe you had a little theanine with it, you know, and then you're like, all right, oh yeah, I want this feeling to keep going. It's kind of like when you get an alcohol buzz, right? And you're like, oh, I'm going to have another beer. It's like, you just get to that coffee that tipped you out of the Goldilocks zone. And now you're feeling jittery, a little sweaty, a little anxious in the meeting. And you're like, oh, okay, I got a few more of these meetings today. I'm going to have to stop having these friggin' coffees. Edge is perfect for that. So instead of pushing you out of the Goldilocks zone, you get another thing that does have some stimulation and dopamine sort of increasing, you know, vibes. It tastes really good. You can sip on it for a long period. Like I can fill this right up and sip on it. I can, you know, make it a bit more of a shot. Works in either setting. But I'm still getting that ritual of having something. I'm getting a little more of something, you know, that sort of craving for a bit more user experience, a bit more psychoactive effect. But it's perfectly suited to keeping you in the Goldilocks zone. It's the only sort of sentence I can use to describe it. You just stay in the pocket. You don't get pushed out of it. And I'm using it more and more for that now, because I'm like, yeah, don't do that thing you always do, Lloyd, where, because, you know, I got pre-workouts in the store. I got nootropics that are loaded with caffeine. I got everything that you can imagine in a candy store for a person like me to want to just be like, let's just add a bit more of this and a bit more of that and just overdo it. And Edge is just this great baseline to keep in there. I'm still doing something, sipping something, enjoying something. I'm still hydrating, but I'm staying in the pocket all day without pushing myself out of it. So I think that's where paraxanthine is really useful, but it's also the synergy of the other ingredients we haven't touched on yet, which is Zynamite. And I believe the trademark's EnXtra, right? Alpinia galanglia. So some people might know it as EnXtra, but Zynamite I'm a big fan of. When you used that, I was like, finally because it's around in a couple of pre-workouts and a few different, you know, it was briefly in a nootropic I used to stock, very briefly, but it's like, it's a really unsung hero. And the pairing with paraxanthine is just, mwah. When you did that, I was like, I've got to get this shit in. Did you get the same thing where they kind of brought you samples and you tried it a bit and messed around with Zynamite?
Yeah. I mean, Zynamite and EnXtra, both for the same reason. You know, like I said, we went through multiple iterations of how we wanted this formula to appear in market. And obviously the backbone is paraxanthine. And so we learned everything we could about paraxanthine. What's that doing in the brain? Like, where is this experience, this sensation coming from? And it is, you know, in that dopamine pathway, you know, and you know, the COMT pathway. And we had a bevy of different ingredients to try to combine this with. But you know, really it's kind of like nature and science just doing its thing, and me just going along for the ride, you know, just trusting the innate intelligence out there. Two of the unsung ingredients in this formula are the decaf green tea and decaf green coffee bean. Because, you know, nature gave us tea, nature gave us coffee, and it's, you know, this combination of caffeine with these other polyphenols and antioxidants and whatnot. And we're like, well, shit, we took the paraxanthine is this cleaned up version of caffeine. All right. So what if we took coffee and tea, pulled the caffeine out of it, and shoved the paraxanthine back in, just to surround that molecule with what nature had intended it to be surrounded with to begin with, and see how that feels. And we did that, and we're like, oh shit, okay, all right, we're onto something here. This feels good, but it was missing a little something. And so we started to look at some of these ingredients that we were sent, but we wanted stuff that wasn't stimulant based. You know, paraxanthine would be the only stimulant in there. And just researching the COMT pathway and spending, I don't know how many hours on PubMed, but just the number of natural ingredients that also play in that pathway, and discovering these different forms of ginger, these different mango leaf extract. And then, okay, there's branded ingredients, that have all these studies, all this safety, all this testing.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, Zynamite, let's try this. Alpinia galanga, EnXtra, let's try this, because both of them cite in their studies that they work on this same pathway that paraxanthine does.
Yep.
And so paraxanthine is the dopamine aggregate, that part of the caffeine molecule that just kind of fills that reservoir.
Yes.
But this pathway that essentially regulates how that dopamine in your brain is broken down and removed or stays at a certain level, that's where Zynamite and EnXtra come in, because at different times and in different ways, it can inhibit some of the enzymes that break down that dopamine level.
Yep.
Which is, it's kind of like the salve for society right now. Like everything that we're doing in our lives is connected to some kind of draw on our dopamine. The constant flood of attention, social media, all these quick dopamine hits, movies like The Social Network, or everything. There's no denying that our society is dopamine dependent at this point right now, for not all the best reasons. And so when we can get those dopamine levels to a healthy level in the brain, and then put natural ingredients into your body that counteract this dopamine being stripped out of the brain, well, then we're doing something pretty positive for one's ability to, like you say, stay in the pocket, right? Like when we talk about a brand ethos and kind of one of Korrect's reasons for being, it's because people are being pulled out of their bodies. Our attention is being just scattered around all over the place. We have almost gotten used to the fact that we're never just doing one thing, or finishing one thing, or just starting one thing. It's just everything is a shotgun blast. And we're like, let's create supplements that bring people back into their body, into the present moment. Because in this moment is where shit gets done. Shit gets started, shit gets worked on, and shit gets finished. It's just moment after moment after moment. And so if we can help people capture the moment and give them this experience of just feeling like what's in front of them is the most important thing, whether that's a workout, whether that's a spreadsheet, whether that's a loved one, whether that's a movie or a podcast, then I think we're serving, not just selling, but serving. So that's that was sort of the impetus behind bringing Energy and Edge to the market.
Dude, that's very poetic, that whole thing there. I love that. I was really enjoying that. I mean, I connect to a lot of that. It's a lot of what we try to do with just the brands and the products we source and the things we work on too. I'm big into the test boosting space. I'm really big on natural herbs that work on that. And the nootropics have always been a love of mine because it helps me work on that stuff. It really does.
What's your favorite test booster?
Well, that's a great question. Some of my favorite, they all do different things, right? And this is part of where I try to educate. It's like to raise low test, or to raise libido, or to improve, maybe something like erection health, are all different things that sometimes we put under the one banner, which is like a test booster. And to be fair, some boosters just throw all that in together. My favorite low testosterone raising herb is probably Tongarali, although I use it very rarely because it actually does make me quite angry. It's quite a yang herb, it's very fiery. Your fuse will be a bit shorter because it works, it works pretty fast, and it drops E2, it seems, a little bit. This is something I was talking about with Paul F. Tang from Nootropics Depot. It seems it sort of raises test at the same time as pulling the cushion down. So it's really good as we get much older, when those two things generally get, reversed a little bit. But if you still have pretty good tone, it can actually spill into a bit of fire quite quickly. So you just need a little bit, bring it in and out. It's like an accelerator pedal. I just tap. I don't take, it's not an everyday herb. One of my favorite herbs, which is, you know, shat on a lot, and I'll tell you why, is actually tribulus. But tribulus, you got to get Bulgarian, and you've got to get it from a really good source. You know, you got to go to the Bulgarians and find the place. And you know, we've done a lot of
Bulgarians.
You got to go there. They're on another level with their tribulus. It's a bit like going to probably Malaysia. You know, the largest exporter of Tongat. They'll take you on a journey for Tongat.
Well,
right?
the Bulgarians gave us that horrific exercise called the split squat. So
they have to be pretty much psychopaths to do that, right? So you can imagine what they're like with their herbs.
They need their testosterone.
Right? And it is not the same thing. Eric, I'm telling you, like if you get Bulgarian tribulus that's standard, we got one that was like standardized to, they have the protodiacin content, but it's really the furanol saponin content that you want. It's not just one compound in trib that really does the thing. But there's a top spec that just makes me, I feel like I'm on steroids. Like I am just so amped up. It seems to be raising DHT levels. It's a bit too much. It's very powerful. And then there was a mid spec that I loved. This one was more libido. I feel great. Everything that I sort of want from tribulus that I sort of loved about the herb, it has in spades, and it's like it's the proper stuff. Whereas most of it's Chinese tribulus on the market. And as happens in this space, you know, people go like, because it used to be all about the Bulgarian trib, right? Back in the day, that's what you would hear about. I mean, you and me have been around long enough to remember that. Some of the guys that I sort of see these days, they didn't even remember when tribulus first came out. And so all they know is this Chinese one. And it's nothing to do with the fact that it's Chinese. It's just that that species doesn't produce much of the furanol saponins that you need to have an effect. It's very low. It's also very low in protodiacin, but it's much cheaper because China's great at producing things en masse. And so as such, I guess the association with tribulus started to become over the years that it does nothing. I didn't feel anything. I don't really look for it on the label. And it's because it's not the primo, you know, it's not the right species. So that's one that I really like. And, you know, there's a few others that I mean, I really like Shilajit. Obviously, it's one of those things that, you know, every man and his dog has a Shilajit product now. So to get good quality Shilajit, it's a bit, again, it's a sourcing mission. And that's kind of what I specialize in, because you know, one of the things I want to eventually do is some documentaries as well. We'll go to these places. We'll find out about the sourcing. We'll find out, you know, out about the history of the herb and take people on a bit of a journey. That's a little pet project of mine I'd love to get around to one day. But yeah, there are a couple of the standouts, and there's a few others that have got some emerging data on them, which is always cool. You know, often backs up what we know from thousands of years of traditional use. You know, and there's a study that backs up what they already knew, but that's cool. You know, I'm
also a big fan of the Shilajit.
Oh yeah, cool, man.
I've been using Shilajit consistently for almost a year and a half now. You know, like 5 days on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing I do for testosterone, and I'm in my, you know, mid 50s. Yet to take that TRT journey. But between Shilajit and pine pollen, the two things that I've been using consistently for the last year and a half, still setting PRs in squat and deadlift, still putting on muscle mass. So look, there's controversial research on both of those ingredients. I'm just an N of one, but anyone that's made it this far in the podcast and is wondering a combination that works for me, 4 days of Shilajit, 3 days of pine pollen, cycle every week like that, and you're gonna be a happy dude if you're in your 40s or 50s. That's my personal experience.
Oh man, that's so cool. Thanks for sharing that, because pine pollen is an awesome product. Again, another one of those cases where sourcing probably matters. Making
very much so.
Yeah, right. And it's a little bit niche. That is one that I want to bring out. I've got a little brand. We actually do a Shilajit right now. So I'll have to send you one, see if you like it. You like the resin, or you like to use the capsule powder Primavai?
I don't even know what regular coffee tastes like anymore, because every cup of coffee I've had in the morning for the last year and a half has had black tar
Okay.
melted in there. I've come to just crave the taste now.
Yeah,
But
it's weird.
anyone
Hey?
else that would sip my morning coffee would spit it right out.
Yeah, no, I've got the same thing, obviously, and a lot of my customers do now too. It's like your body knows it. At first, you're like, "Whoa, that's very bold. What is that?" And then later, it's like the body realizes, like with so many things, it's like, "Oh, this is really good for me. I actually want you to have more of that," and you come to like the taste. Particularly in a coffee, it sort of dilutes it just the right amount. No, look, I'll send you a jar of mine. It's decent. We've got it tested. It's 70% fulvic acid content. No impurities. Urethans tested. So like it's good quality. We're going to keep trying to up the quality over time, but I'm very happy. It's certainly the best I can source in Australia by a country mile. So I'll get that out to you. You can try it, man. See if you like it.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely want to include pine pollen in our lineup one day too. We're doing a little bit of research into it now. It's a very fascinating one. Since you brought it up, I'll just touch on what you'll traditionally find if you Google it, or AI it these days, is it may contain some naturally occurring steroid-like hormones and compounds like epiandrosterone. Now that's possibly not how it works in the body. You know how these things are. It's like they sort of analyze it and maybe find similar kind of backbones and structures.
Plant androgens.
Yeah, but what I do notice with it too is it has this. I think it's got a really positive effect on the prostate, kind of similar to other pollen products can too, and it definitely seems to help with sexual function as well. Without getting too specific, but it's like the sensitivity's back. There's just this really nice. So outside the motivating feeling that it seems to give as well, it seems to really be good for men's health in that way as well. You feel the need to urinate a little less in the night and a few things like that. And these are really usually good signs that something's also assisting the prostate. There's been no research on that with pine pollen, as far as I know at this point in time. But that's a rabbit hole I really want to go down one day and see if we can get into some of the weeds on what actually it's doing, because I think it's a great product. And again, the Chinese have been using it for thousands of years. And they're probably one of the most detailed apothecaries, and I guess in a way, it's a very scientific study of herbs. It's just not using, Western scientific methods that didn't exist back then. So yeah, that's a really cool combo. I love that you're on that, man. That's awesome. Have you tried, Tom? Did you ever try the?
I did, yeah. I mean, I think maybe it was 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
One of my physicals, I got my testosterone came back. I think it tested at like 380, something like that, which is like low normal.
Yeah.
But everyone in this Austin community, they see 380 as a T level. They're like, give me the peptides, give me the testosterone. Like they're just optimizing. They're getting their levels up to 6, 7, 8, 900.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, I see all these folks my age and younger just sticking themselves with needles 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I'm like, I don't want that life. So I just set out to try every natural thing that I could until something worked or whatever. All my workouts stayed the same.
Yeah.
I ran through Tongkat Ali, Tribulus. Huberman had a couple different podcasts where he was talking about the testosterone and these different combinations. And I tried those cocktails for a while with just moderate success. And then when I got onto this pine pollen Shilajit combo, the sensation was more immediate, whether it was some of the hydrating elements of the Shilajit or some of the energy producing elements of the pine pollen, whatever it was, it aligned with my own sort of approach to formulating, right? Like even if the desired effect doesn't truly happen for 4 or 6 or 8 weeks, I want someone to feel something the first time and every time they take something I create.
Yes.
Even if it's not the end product, they need to feel something to connect what they're putting into their body, to their body, and to their experience to make them want to continue to take it. And the combination, pine pollen did that the first time, Shilajit did that the first time. So it made me want to continue taking them.
Yep.
And so I was getting this little energy bump and this little sort of refreshing bump from the trace minerals or whatever else is in the Shilajit.
Yes.
And 6 months later, I'm like, okay, lean body mass up, fat down. A year later, more lean body mass up, fat down. I'm a slow incremental growth kind of guy. You got
Absolutely.
a lot of patience for this sort of stuff. And so
way more sustainable, and again, with the Goldilocks zone, right? It gets you right in the pocket. TRT, we got a lot of downstream possible issues. We got a lot of chance of overdoing that. And then you spill over into estrogen and all kinds of different issues. So like what's great about these slower builds and tune-ups, that have an effect immediately, but also just tune up the body over time, is you don't have those knock-on effect issues. And that's what's great. I mean, Shilajit actually raises DHEA production and DHEAS, which is a stored form of DHEA in the body. And that's actually produced by the kidneys. A lot of people don't know this, but there's almost like two sets of gonads in a way, or two sets of, hormone facilities in the body. In women, obviously it's the ovaries and the adrenal glands on the kidneys. And in men, it's, the gonads, the balls, and it's the top of the kidneys, that's where we store these adrenal glands. And that produces most of your DHEA, which is a precursor to a lot of hormones, but including testosterone. And the reason Shilajit is so effective, particularly as we get on, is that sometimes we're not losing the signaling from the gonads. There's maybe a little bit of LH signal degradation and things like that, but the kidneys are copping a pounding every day. We're belting them with all kinds of things, similar in some ways to the liver. And so when you take compounds that support the kidneys and the DHEA production and the stored form of DHEA, which is actually more effective because the body can unlock it as it sees fit, a lot of the testosterone rise and improvements can actually come from that. And it's a much steadier testosterone rise, whereas Tongat seems to be HTPA. So it's the pituitary gonadal, so HTGA. It's very aggressive, and the reason it's squashing down E2 as well is, my understanding is the body actually detects your estrogen level to know when to squirt out some more, for want of a better description, when to release more testosterone. So it's actually not monitoring testosterone levels, which is a little confusing for people. It's monitoring estrogen because it's the downstream, metabolite. So it's going, estrogen's high, he must have heaps of test. We're not going to produce anymore till that drops down lower. It monitors the back end. And so the trouble with exogenous solutions is it'll flood both ends eventually. And so if you come back off, it's a hard road back because your estrogen's high for ages and your body isn't producing anything because it's going, hey, he's got heaps. Why would he have all this estrogen if he needed test? And so, what's great about things like Shilajit, it just keeps that top up going. You got the body do whatever it wants with it. It gets to choose to pull it out of DHEAS storage mode into active mode. And, in pine pollen, we still got the question mark. It's probably doing all kinds of cool stuff, maybe freeing bound tests from SHBG, which definitely goes up as we age. Maybe it's actually adding a little bit of epiandrosterone, a great, it's like a DHT derivative where you just feel energy, and no doubt your lifts would go up on that. So yeah, I love these sort of things. And, similar to what you said about some of the ingredients in Edge and the energy product and even, the ketone product here. But what I like about you putting in some of those compounds from, tea and coffee with the caffeine removed and replaced by the paraxanthine is the entourage effect. This is something that, you actually hear Aubrey talk about it. You hear a lot of formulators touch on it, but other formulators like to go the other way of extracting specific compounds, actives, till we get almost close to pharmaceutical. But I'm a big fan of entourage effects because there's so many things we don't know that Mother Nature knows, right?
Yeah.
That's built in, that highlights these things even more, just outside our understanding at the present time. And so I love that you've basically brought the entourage effect back to these very specific nootropics so that we're sort of getting the best of both worlds. And I like that in test boosting. I like that in nootropics. I think it's a great way to make sure you're benefiting from, both worlds as opposed to just going down that one track mind of like, let's get the exact molecule. It's like, yeah, it's effective, but you might be missing out, so.
No,
Uh,
it's exactly that. It's you're not going to outsmart nature most of the time. So,
Rarely.
you know,
Yeah.
you know, wisdom of the ancients and modernized innovation, like two of our pillars for formulation, it's just makes sense. I almost feel like you're challenging the universe in a negative way to be like, I know you've done this for millennia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna improve on
Yeah.
what you worked a billion years on. And it's like,
Yeah.
maybe, maybe not.
Yep.
Uh, and maybe it's going to be a few years before I have $500,000 to do the actual study to prove what I'm feeling is actually happening.
Yeah.
But these ingredients are safe by themselves. They do X, Y, Z. We put them together. They're safe. Do they have this synergistic effect? We don't know because we didn't study that specifically. However, it does A, B, C, and D because these four ingredients do A, B, C, and D. So try it, see what your body tells you.
Yes.
And, like just like we did with Alpha Brain, right? Like back in the Onnit days,
Yep.
the stuff was working. And then we put it through clinicals at the
Yeah.
Boston Center for Memory to prove, just to say, okay, like it's actually doing what this borrowed research said it was doing. And now we have the proof. And we did it with
Yep.
DreamTech Sport and with New Mood. And it's kind of, not all supplement companies, most supplement companies, I'd say 99% of them, we're not going to front load our P&L with $500,000 to $1 million worth of, clinical research. It's just the quickest way to go out of business,
Absolutely. That's
so,
right. That's the reality of it, and much like when we touched on some of those ancient traditions, they went off all anecdotal, really. Like that's the ultimate way to know if something's working, right? And that's repeatable anecdotally in effect
right.
in real world use. So it's not to be discounted. It's like this works, and it certainly feels like they're all coming together and doing that. And the research just ultimately be just that, it's a nice credible stamp to put on it one day. And of course, when you have the funds to do it, it's a nice thing to do for consumers as well to help them, know that, hey, we cared enough to also prove it for you. And you still get people that go, it's funded by the company that made it.
Right.
Sure. You can only ever do your best and try to do the right thing and put some great things out for people. And the rest is in the hands of the universe to a degree, right? There's always going to be, something else that could be done. But it's night and day compared to people that I suppose just put products out and trust what maybe the supplier or manufacturer that they encountered in China say is in it, or just go for buzzwords, make sure it's on the label. They're not really, they left it in someone else's hands to put that in the tub. It's kind of like you can do that. You can enter the market that way, but that's not really the best way to make sure that people are getting a great effect, and you want to be taking these things yourself as well to actually feel it, which is what you guys have done. So, well, look, Eric, it's been amazing talking with you, man. We've got to do this again sometime soon. But before we wrap up, anything on the horizon that you're comfortable sharing, or that, we got a little sneaky peek at the RTD potentiality there. Anything else you want to talk about for the future?
We certainly have some cool stuff coming in the future. Something I'm working on right now is a let's call it a lean body mass formula.
Love it.
I'm sure anyone watching this podcast is probably tracking their protein macros at the same time, right? Like protein has just taken over the entire world. It's also taken over your dinner plate. It's taken over your refrigerator. It's taken over your pantry. It's taken over every shelf in the grocery store. We think there's a better way to do it. Ultimately, people want to maintain lean body mass for as long as possible. So much research has come out over the past 20 plus years about lean body mass being an indicator of longevity and how important muscle is. not everybody can jam all the protein necessary without gaining weight or without having gastric upset and that sort of stuff. Short story is we are mid R&D on a formula that will produce muscle protein synthesis and mTOR activation and build and maintain lean body mass without the weight of 25 grams of protein per serving. Something lighter, something easier, and something that you feel the first time, but compounds over time. All in line with our ethos of bringing you kind of back to your body, back to the present moment. Some really interesting new to market ingredients that haven't even been commercialized yet.
Wow.
So
Stop it. Get me excited. Now, that's crazy. Look, that's a really good idea as well. I've got one other friend in the space toying where he's got a product coming out with that sort of same mindset behind it. The protein industry, we almost need some other solutions because it's getting out of hand, and it isn't the only way to support the body with mTOR. Oh, dude, I'm going to hold back because I know you obviously, there's a bit of IP involved in these things, and you got some development there. But make sure you let me know when you can what that is, because I want some already. Let's put it that way.
yeah. I think this stuff's going to be special. It's there's ingredients that folks have heard of, and then there's one or two ingredients that maybe nobody's heard of.
Yep.
But it's the first time these ingredients have ever been put together in a formula. So we'll see. We're still testing it, going through different flavor iterations, but we think it's going to be pretty special product. So you'll be one of the first to know when it's ready.
Thanks, man. That's all I ask. That's amazing.
Right on, brother. Right on.
Well, thanks, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll talk more. It's really good to nerd out with a brand owner. It's rare they have that much knowledge that you can get into the weeds. So again, anyone watching along, I mean, this is the guy making your subs. So if you want to try Edge, if you want to try Fuel, it's available across the US. It's available in Australia now too. I think they're great nootropic lifestyle products, and they really will keep you in the pocket without burning you out. We'll have to get you back, Eric, but I'll let you get on with your day, man, and let's speak real soon, brother.
Right on, brother. Thanks, and appreciate you. We love having a little outpost in Australia. We, had a little outpost there at Onnit for a short period of time, but we love spreading the love as far across the oceans as possible. So thanks for your trust and your business, and let's keep helping each other out.
Hell yeah.